Alright, welcome to the second episode of the Feng Shui Basketball Show, where we talk NBA predictions leading up to the 2020 season, where we're gonna bet real money. I think today we're gonna talk about the NBA draft, which is probably my favorite day of the year, to be honest with you. So thank you so much for checking this out, and if you like what you see, please click subscribe. Thank you. So as the title states, we're going to talk winners, losers of the 2019 NBA draft, as well as some thoughts that I had in regards to the draft. And then we're going to look at Rookie of the Year predictions. What a good betting line would be for that. It's a pretty simple Rookie of the Year race, but hopefully some lines will still jump out. So to begin with, the biggest winners are probably the New Orleans Pelicans. What a day they had, not just in terms of grabbing Zion first overall, but trading down from 4 to pick up Jackson Hayes and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think were honestly one of, if not the best moves in the draft. David Griffin really put on a masterclass in terms of how to turn around an organization, in my opinion. Right, so look at how they're set up in the immediate future with Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart. Jackson Hayes while raw, is gonna be a rim protecting 5 who can jump, dunk, and run the floor with Zion and Lonzo. You're probably only going to get about 15 minutes this year to begin with, but the worst case scenario is you look at somebody like a Willie Cauley-Stein. That's essentially where you're going to get in Jackson Hayes. Is he a bit of a reach at 8? Maybe, debatable, but I didn't think the best position for Zion was the center spot, and I think this clearly demonstrates that New Orleans views Zion at the 4, which I think is his best role in the league. Kind of like a roaming 4, both on offense and on defense, actually. There's a bit of wing depth issues for the Pelicans, but I'm sure they'll get it addressed. And if you look how big the guards are, Lonzo, I think it's like 6'6" or something. Drew is about 6'6", and Nickeil Alexander-Walker also 6'6". Alexander-Walker was arguably the biggest steal in the draft, in my opinion, at 17. A ton of value there. He's a combo guard who is in a lot of ways very similar to Malcolm Brogdon or even Drew Holiday. He can shoot, he can dribble, he can defend. He's a low ego player. Just a very well-rounded guy. Somebody who has a 8 to 10 year, NBA career at the very least, in my opinion. So I think the Pelicans are not only set up for the present today, but definitely also for the future. Just the haul that they got, 3 starters, 1 superstar, potentially another all-star, and, a rim protecting big in Jackson Hayes. So definitely big winners, New Orleans Pelicans. Also, winners, the Atlanta Hawks, for the second year in a row. A lot of people roasted the Hawks last year for trading down to pick up Trae Young instead of Luka Doncic. I thought it was a bit of a toss-up, and they got the 10th overall pick this year, which led to Cam Reddish, obviously. We'll talk about that in a bit, but very rare do you get a trade in the top 10 where a team moves up and both sides win, which is what I think happened this year with the Atlanta Hawks and the New Orleans Pelicans. A lot of people are excited about the Hawks. I actually think they're a playoff team next year. We'll talk about that later on in the summer once the roster moves get done, but in an NBA where 3-and-D wings who can shoot, who have length, and the prototypical body types are coveted by pretty much any team, the Atlanta Hawks pretty much picked up the 2 best prospects in the draft, in my opinion. DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish are both 6'8", 6'9". Hunter has an immediate NBA body already. Neither one needs to dominate the ball. I did say last time that RJ Barrett here would have been an interesting pick, but it seemed like DeAndre Hunter was what they wanted all along, which probably means that Kevin Huerter will play a lot more on ball moving forward. The only downside here for me is this means that John Collins is going to play the 5. He's a little skinny in my opinion. Maybe he'll put on more weight. Maybe they'll make a run at somebody like a DeAndre Jordan, or potentially bring Al Horford back, which I think might be interesting. Anyways, they got a ton of cap room this summer to figure that out. And, I think next year, once Bazemore and some of those guys are off the books, I think they only have rookie deals. So, I mean, they can have a huge summer next year and essentially have Trae Young entering his prime, with Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter on the wings. Even if only one of them develops to be a star, the other one at the very least is a capable role player. The worst case you're getting is somebody like a Reggie Bullock. Best case is somebody like a Paul George or even Kawhi Leonard. So this was definitely a very high upside move. Huge props to Atlanta for moving up and getting their guy in Hunter. And having Cam Reddish fall to them at 10 was really just a gift. So I think the Hawks did a great job. Some depth needed up front, but I'm sure they'll figure that out in the summer. Loser, Darius Garland. Man, I feel really bad for this kid, to be honest with you. I really like Darius Garland. He sat out pretty much all of his college career, played only 5 games, but has a lot of Damian Lillard in him, who's my favorite player in the league right now. But just to go to the Cleveland Cavs, I think, is really unfortunate for him. I don't know how the hell that backcourt is going to work. I understand that John Beilein runs a multi-guard, multi-ball handler system that has a really high pace and values shooting, which is great, but I mean, there's only one basketball, and as far from what I saw from Colin Sexton last year, he literally can't do anything off ball. He doesn't shoot it well enough. He doesn't cut well enough. And Darius Garland doesn't strike me as somebody who's going to play second fiddle. The Ringer did a show earlier yesterday, I think, where they were talking about how Cleveland wanted to be Portland East. And, but the big difference was by the time CJ came in, Dame was already established. Dame was already the guy. And, the guys were talking about this, and I 100% agree with that. I don't know what the fuck Cleveland is doing, and I feel really bad for Darius Garland. He seemed like a really good kid. There were a ton of teams that would have traded up to get him, and I think Cleveland could have gotten a massive haul. I wrote in my article that somebody like Boston, would have made a ton of sense, and instead Boston settled for Carson Edwards in the low 30s. But Boston probably would have given up 14, 20, and 22 to move up and select Darius Garland at 5. There's a lot of point guard needy teams that would have traded up. So once again, no idea what Cleveland is doing. Feel really bad for Darius Garland. To make matters worse, they selected Kevin Porter Jr. at 30. I like him. There's a bit of Nick Young, OJ Mayo in him. He went to USC as well. But once again, now you have 3 ball-dominant guards who have suspect jump shots. I mean, outside of Darius Garland, the other 2 have suspect jump shots, definitely. And his roster obviously makes no sense, right? You have Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson on the books still. I think Kevin Love is going to be one of the really interesting names, one of the actual people that decide the NBA offseason, which we'll talk about next time. But definitely a loser, not just the Cavaliers, but specifically Darius Garland. The loser, the Indiana Pacers. This has nothing to do with Goga Bitadze. If you don't know who Goga Bitadze is, he is a 7'1" center out of Georgia, as in Europe. I love Goga's game. Goga would be everything you wish Enes Kanter was, and less annoying. He can shoot, he can pass, he's good interior, offensively, he can rebound. In defense, he projects to be better than Kanter. We'll see how that goes, but he's definitely a much more well-rounded Enes Kanter, and by all means a great prospect, a modern center that would have fit in a lot of teams, to be honest with you. He's got a little bit of Nikola Jokic, in my opinion. Maybe not as smooth in terms of a passer, but definitely a bit of Jokic. I just don't know what the fuck the Pacers are doing, right? If you paid attention to the 2019 season, one of the big problems, or not problems, one of the things that everybody kept asking the Pacers was, what are you going to do about your front court? You have Sabonis and Turner, and they couldn't really play together. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if you look at their on-off numbers, both of them played a lot better without the other person. Sabonis was incredibly consistent. Miles Turner was arguably in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, right? So I get that a lot of times you gotta just take the best player available. It's debatable that Goga was the best player. I'm just looking at the actual where he was taken. I mean, there was like 7 wings that were taken after Goga that would have made more sense, in my opinion. Nasir Little jumps off just off the top of my head. Jordan Poole even would have worked. Keldon Johnson, Darius Baisley, the list goes on. I think the Pacers really, really screw this one up, to be honest with you. Let's see what happens. Maybe they'll move Sabonis and maybe they'll move Goga as well. I think out of the 3, I would definitely keep Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner has the highest upside. So you just spent the 17th overall pick this year? When did Goga? Goga was drafted 18th. So you just spend the 18th pick on a backup big man. Yeah, in a league that doesn't value big men. At a time when you have no depth on the wing, and might run Aaron Holiday out as your starting point guard in 2020. So I get 18 is one of those really awkward spots. Completely understand that, but I don't know what Indiana's doing at this point, to be honest with you. Way too many big men. Going back into the winners column, winners, teams who waited for players to fall to their laps. This was a really weird draft. Let's start with Denver. I have no clue how the hell Bol dropped to 44. Completely get that he's a twig. Completely get that he just had a serious injury. Reminiscent of Greg Oden. I think the best way to describe Bol is a skinny Greg Oden that can shoot, right? And I understand just medically this is a nightmare to deal with for a team, but this guy was a top 5 talent, a year ago, easily. And even as recent as probably a month ago, he was at the very least a lottery pick. So I have no idea how he dropped to 44. But having said that, I think Denver got incredibly lucky here. Denver is so deep that they can take a flyer on these type of players and really just wait a year and see how it goes. They did that with Michael Porter Jr. last year, who by all means is going to be healthy this year. And I'm really excited to see him play during Summer League, actually. Bol can take his time, at least a year, if not 2, to get back. And if he puts on some weight, I think he's something like 208 pounds right now for 7'3", which is honestly fucking insane, considering that I'm pretty much 200 pounds and 6 foot tall. But I think for Bol, if he can kind of get into that 250 range, 240 range over the next 2 to 3 years, this is a 7'3" guy with a 7'8" wingspan who can shoot threes at 40%. Whether he spells Jokic or he plays with Jokic, if this works out, this would be insane. Can you imagine a front court for Denver where you have a 6'11" Michael Porter Jr., a 7'1" Nikola Jokic, and a 7'3" Bol? That's just gonna be crazy, right? So definitely winners, the Denver Nuggets. Another huge winner are the Portland Trailblazers, who are my favorite team in the NBA right now. And Nasir Little, how did he drop to, what did he drop, 20, when did it take him, 25, right? I think Portland is most likely going to lose Al-Farouq Aminu this year. Mo Harkless is definitely not the long-term answer. Evan Turner is, there, I guess. I just want to check their cap sheet quickly. Portland salary. Portland has always been starved for wing players, right? And now that they have Nasir Little at 25, this was like a gift from God. Nasir Little, once again, a top 5 talent this time last year, undisputed. At North Carolina, I was actually listening to a Zach Lowe podcast earlier today. They brought up a really interesting point. There was a lot of upperclassmen and, people like Cam Johnson really propelled this year, and Kobe White ran the show. And as a result, what happened was players like Nasir Little, who, are not ball-dominant wings, didn't really get a lot of the, the hype that they were supposed to get. But I think towards the end of the year last year, especially if you watched the ACC tournament, Nasir Little really kind of came out. You got to see the emotion. And once again, he's an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, so give him some time. Portland definitely got very lucky there. And then the last one would be the Orlando Magic getting Chuma Okeke at 16. And for anybody who watched the tournament and watched Auburn's run, you knew right off the bat that Chuma Okeke was the star there. Yes, Auburn shot a million threes per game, but Chuma Okeke is something, the modern big man, the modern wing, very similar to DeAndre Hunter. In a lot of ways, he's a cheaper, poor man DeAndre Hunter with a torn ACL. But once again, Orlando can give him some time to recover, right? They're fine on the wing. Lord knows Orlando has enough long wing players who play the 3-4 position. Could Orlando have picked somebody else, like a point guard or a shooting guard there? Yeah, probably. It's probably what I would have done. I think when he was drafted, there were still a couple of good ones on the board. Once again, Jordan Poole comes to mind. Nickley Alexander-Walker, I think, would have been a perfect fit. He was drafted as the next pick. But having said that, you're nitpicking at this point. Getting Chuma Okeke at 16 is definitely a steal there if he comes back healthy. So great job, Orlando. Denver, Portland, Orlando was just some of the teams that got really lucky this year. And hopefully all three of them will really work out. We are getting to the part of this show where I'm going to divert a little bit from the mainstream media. So I'm going to say loser, Minnesota Timberwolves. Once again, nothing wrong with Jared Culver. Excuse me. I really like Jared Culver. I just don't understand what they are doing. And I know there's been a lot of rumors about how Minnesota is going to make a run at D'Angelo Russell, which would make this a lot more sensible, right? But for now, I don't know what Minnesota is doing. You had Kobe White on the board. You traded up to the 6th spot to pick Jared Culver when Kobe was there and went 7th. You don't have a point guard, and I think you have Jeff Teague right now and Tyus Jones, and Josh Okogie came out last year. Gangbusters, I thought he should have made first rookie team. And I really like his game. So now essentially you have Jared Culver and Josh Okogie at that 2-3 spot. Can either one of them really be a long-term 3? I'm not really sure, right? And obviously Andrew Wiggins is the elephant in the room, but I don't know what you can do about there. Hopefully they get a chance to move Wiggins this offseason. I doubt it, but Kobe White was a fast-paced, score-first point guard that would have been perfect with Cat. So are you going to move Culver to the 1 here? I don't really know what the plan is. I guess a Culver-Okogie backcourt is interesting in theory. But I think what will happen, or what's been rumored at least, is that the Timberwolves will make a play for D'Angelo Russell, which I think would have been cool. Another player that they could have picked, in my opinion, is they could have stayed put and taken Cam Johnson. I know there's a lot of Cam Johnson haters. We'll get into that later when we talk about Phoenix. But at the very least, Cam Johnson is a floor running, stretch 4 that can knock it down, right? And I think that's a perfect complement besides Cat. Cat can play down low. I understand he likes to drift out to the perimeter, but he can definitely play down low. And Cat and Cam running the floor together, with Kobe White or another point guard, D'Angelo Russell. He's just gonna get a ton of spacing on the fast break there. So that's something else they could have done. But definitely for now, until D'Angelo Russell goes there, I would say Minnesota was a loser. All right, next, what I wanted to talk about were a couple of things that I found really interesting about the draft. So just quickly, one, I don't know what Boston is doing. I understand Boston's having a bit of an identity crisis, I think, in terms of losing Kyrie and Horford and probably Terry Rozier. They definitely need a point guard, somebody who can distribute the ball. They didn't get that. Instead, they took Romeo Langford at 14, who I really like. I'm big on Langford. I think his 1 year in Indiana shouldn't count. He was dealing with a hand injury and a ton of pressure and a bad team. But I just don't think it's a good fit. He's also a ball-dominant guard. There's going to be some headbutting with him and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I completely understand from a talent standpoint, he was worth it. but I don't like the fit, definitely. Grant Williams, though, very good guy. Love that pick. Can probably start at the 4 even, and maybe eventually as he gets older, move to the 5. A younger, less big Al Horford in a way, very suited for Brad Stevens' system. Would love to see Grant play the 5 in a PJ Tucker / Al Horford role, but we'll see how that goes. And then getting Carson Edwards at 33, obviously, very cool. Just watching Carson Edwards play is a ton of fun. A ton of energy, a ton of threes. I'm sure Boston will love watching him. But all in all, I don't know what Boston is doing over the next 30 days. I guess we'll find out. What are you gonna do about Gordon Hayward? How good is he? How healthy he's gonna be this year will be really interesting. So moving on to probably the thing that I loved the most in this draft, which was Phoenix taking Ty Jerome at 24. Okay, a lot of people have been giving Phoenix shit. I completely disagree. Okay, so I will stick my neck out here and say I loved what the Phoenix Suns did this draft. When across the board, every analyst said it was retarded. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, actually. Maybe scratch the last bit, but so first of all, a couple trades. They unloaded TJ Warren's contract, but they almost immediately filled up all of the cap space with other trades. A lot of people thought they reached for Cam Johnson. I didn't. I thought Cam Johnson, injury, yes, but he was a 45% knockdown shooter, coming off screens. And I think Phoenix is actually developing an identity. And I really hope Ty Jerome gets to start from day one with Devin Booker. I always thought that Devin needed a guard who is very selfless, can play on or off him, has decent size. Ty is 6'6". Ty Jerome can put on some weight. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's incredibly consistent. He's kind of like Malcolm Brogdon, and I think that's exactly what Devin Booker needs. More importantly, if you look at both Cam Johnson and Ty Jerome, they're both gonna be knockdown shooters at the next level. There's some rumors about Phoenix going after D'Angelo Russell. The money doesn't really make sense now unless D'Angelo takes a huge pay cut, but I hope that doesn't happen. I really hope Ty Jerome and Devin Booker are starting from day one. And I would love to see that. I think James Jones did a really good job this draft. I think Phoenix is forming an identity. They're getting rid of a lot of their wings who cannot shoot, like TJ Warren or Josh Jackson, which they'll probably get rid of this summer. So great job, Phoenix, in my opinion. Third things I wanted to touch upon was whoever Luka Samanic is. I don't know who this guy is that the Spurs drafted. Was it a reach? Maybe. Have I ever watched his tape? No. Do I know who he is? No. Could I pick him out from a crowd? No. But, this is San Antonio Spurs, who have proved time and time again that they know what they're doing with international players. So I'm not going to doubt it. If you look at the Spurs past players, they have usually used a 4 like this, a multi-purpose 4 that can defend a little, maybe grow into that, but offensively fairly versatile, can shoot a little bit, pass a little bit, handle a little bit, and play inside. And I think that is what Luka Samanic projects to be, right? If you look at what the Spurs had with Luis Scola, Boris Diaw, and Paul Gasol to a degree. But the pick that I really liked with the Spurs was Keldon Johnson at 29, which I think was an absolute steal. I think he was the best Kentucky player out of the 3 between PJ Washington, Tyler Hero, and Keldon Johnson. I really like Johnson. He's an aggressive wing. Somebody who complements Dejounte Murray and Derek White really well, in my opinion. Like, he is that go-getting basket type of person. Lonnie Walker is more of a shooter. Hopefully he'll come back this year healthier. I actually really like what the Spurs are building here with a young core, and I think you're going to see that transition out of DeMar and LA this year and into this core. And then the last thing I kind of just want to touch up upon is Talen Horton-Tucker at 46 for the Lakers. I personally love this. I think Talen Horton-Tucker is a great prospect. Very young, very raw, 6'4" with a 7'1" wingspan, a ton of potential. Out of Iowa State, the Cyclones usually turn out some pretty decent and consistent basketball players, some high IQ guys. The only thing here is that the Lakers have nobody on the roster, right? So THD might play 15 minutes as early as Christmas or starting day. which is asking for a lot. But I think if Lakers can be patient, I think this will be a really good pick, to be honest with you. So I'm really looking forward to how that turns out. And those were some of the thoughts that I had of the 2019 NBA draft. All right. So the last thing we want to kind of go over is Rookie of the Year predictions. This is potentially something I'm personally going to put money on. I'm probably going to set aside about $20,000 around September for the first couple months of the NBA season. I bet a little differently, which we'll cover on later on in the summer. I only play plus money, and I only bet live lines to win games. I don't touch totals. But there's some preseason bets that I do touch. Championship, win totals, and Rookie of the Year races. And I think this year, unfortunately, there isn't gonna be a ton of value. It's really hard for me to imagine anybody outside of the top 3 drafted players to win Rookie of the Year. Having said that, I can see all 3 of them winning. The one that I think will win will be RJ Barrett. He seems to be, 1, durable. 2, he's going to be a stat sheet stuffer, and the Knicks want him to be that. 3, Zion has a team. I don't see Zion jacking up 15 shots, and that's not really his game. And in terms of Ja Morant, he has to share the ball with Jaren Jackson Jr. and whoever else Memphis picks up this offseason. So can I see Ja averaging something like 18 and 10? Maybe. I think Ja Morant will have a usage rate probably somewhere close to 30%, which gives him a good shot at Rookie of the Year. But my money would be on RJ Barrett. The question is just what the line is going to be. I haven't seen any lines come out yet. Maybe something we'll touch upon closer to the start of the season. But if RJ Barrett is anywhere near plus 500, which is 5-1, I would definitely put money on this. Realistically, I think he will probably be closer to plus 250, plus 300 at best. I think Vegas will get a lot of dumb money on Zion, and it's absolutely possible that Zion wins, but I think the Zion line will be betted down to about maybe plus 150, plus 200 for him to win Rookie of the Year. So once again, I would love to take RJ up plus 400, plus 500. So we'll see what the line is. 2 other guys, though, that really interest me. One is Rui Hachimura. I know a lot of people didn't like this pick. A lot of people think Washington's a joke. But I actually really like Rui. I think there's a combination of LaMarcus Aldridge / Paul Millsap in there. I think he's going to be an incredibly hard worker, and I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. Physically, he has a big body. He can start from day one. He can defend. He's not a good defender, but he can defend. Some people have said he has some Kawhi Leonard in him. I'm not gonna go that far, but Kawhi was also fairly raw. And he really wanted it when he got drafted. And I think Rui being the first Asian player, of Japanese descent, definitely there's a ton of weight on him. So I think Rui's gonna work super hard. I love this pick, especially if Bradley Beal gets moved. I can completely see Rui Hachimura being the face of Washington. So I think you're going to get incredible odds here. Probably something along the lines of 50-1 plus 5,000. Might be a fun bet. We'll see. And another one I have is Ty Jerome. I think Jerome, if he does start, if D'Angelo Russell doesn't come, I think Jerome can put up something like a 16-5 and 7 stat sheet. I think that might be enough for him to get a shot at Rookie of the Year in the event that, Zion, Ja, and RJ all get injured or some shit like that, right? I think obviously it'll be a ton of value. I probably won't put money on Ty Jerome. I love Ty Jerome. I think he's an incredible player, and I think his game will definitely translate. But for the record, I think RJ Barrett will win Rookie of the Year, and I don't think it's going to be close if he stays healthy. I think RJ will easily put up something like 21, 7, and 4 easily. And that definitely will be enough for him to win Rookie of the Year. So if you see a line out there with RJ where it's plus 400, plus 500, definitely put some money on that. right, and that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the Feng Shui Basketball Show. Thank you to everybody who checked this out. Give me your takes. Tell me what I'm wrong on. I think next week we're gonna do an episode where we look at 5 transactions that will actually define free agency, especially 5 players. So somebody like a Kevin Love, or Al Horford going to the Mavs, which has been reported a lot recently, which I love that move, to be honest with you, but might be a year too early. I've already given my predictions on what I think the big names will do, but I think the next level guys, the Malcolm Brogdons, the D'Angelo Russells, the Al Horfords, those guys are going to really define free agency. And I think you're going to see a ripple effect from there. So come back next week. If you have any questions, please comment below. And if you like this video, I would really appreciate a like button and a subscribe. Thank you so much.